Code of Desire. Chapter 1. They never set out to change the world. That part came later, after the grief, after the silence. Sam Carter and Derek Lynn were just two brilliant minds who happened to marry two even brighter women. Their wives, Elena and Marcy, had been college roommates at Stanford, drawn together by shared ambition and a love of arguing late into the night about the future of technology and the ethics of artificial intelligence. Sam met Elena at a tech symposium on biosignal encryption. Derek met Marcy when she crashed a robotics lab looking for a soldering gun. It was only natural their husbands would eventually meet too. Sam was an IT security savant, an obsessive mind who built digital walls that even governments couldn't breach. Derek was a robotics engineer obsessed with movement, mimicry, and building things that felt human in the hand. When the four of them finally partnered, it was less a collaboration than a synthesis. The real spark came when Sam and Derek started playing around with neural interfaces, brain-machine connections designed to translate thought into motion with minimal latency. The result was Sentrix Halo. Marketed at first as a novelty headset for virtual experiences, Halo was nothing short of revolutionary. A full-spectrum neural interface that bypassed traditional inputs and responded directly to user intent. It wasn't just VR, it was full-body immersion. Every motion, every breath, every heartbeat was mirrored by your avatar in real time. You didn't control the character, you became it. Gamers were the first to go wild for it. Halo launched alongside an open-world experience called Synapse, developed in-house with a dream budget and a vision of complete sensory freedom. It was like nothing anyone had ever played. Responsive, fluid, terrifyingly intuitive. Reviews called it digital transcendence. But that wasn't what made the men rich. What made them billionaires was the licensing. Within weeks of launch, every major tech and entertainment company was bidding for a slice. Sony, Google, Tesla, everyone wanted the Halo system to plug into their platform, their game, their simulator. But Sam and Derek didn't bite, not at first. They waited until the perfect buyer came to them, Neurocore Interactive, a military-adjacent think tank with deep pockets and global reach. Neurocore wanted to use Halo for training simulations, mental health treatments, even memory storage. And they were willing to pay. The deal was staggering. $1.2 billion up front, plus a 10% royalty on every licensed product using the Halo tech, locked in perpetuity. Sam had insisted on that clause. Derek backed him without hesitation. They never worked again after that. Within 6 months, their wives were gone. A rainy Thursday night, a routine dinner trip, a wrong turn on Highway 50, a tractor trailer, a shredded guardrail. No calls, no goodbyes, just headlights vanishing into the canyon. Grief hollowed them both. Sam buried himself in encryption theory. Derek stopped speaking for a time. Neither man could bring themselves to set foot in their old homes. They sold their houses. But they weren't interested in remarriage, not in companionship, not in healing. Some wounds weren't meant to close. Instead, they bought land. 70 acres of forested seclusion near the Colorado border. At its center stood an old sandstone mansion, renovated just months before by a wealthy entrepreneur who died suddenly of a heart attack. The estate was enormous, 4 stories tall with arched windows, steep gables, and wide porches that wrapped around the structure like protective arms. Original stone fireplaces warmed the rooms inside. A library with hand-carved bookshelves lined the west wing. The ballroom had been converted into a home theater by the previous owner, but Derek had other plans. Beneath the house, hidden from view, they built the lab. It began as a simple storm shelter. Then it expanded, slowly, obsessively, like a second home blooming underground. They hired no contractors. Everything was prefabricated off-site and assembled under cover of night. Supplies were drone-dropped in batches. The elevator shaft was hidden in what appeared to be a wine cellar, secured behind a biometric scanner disguised as a rack of Merlot. The lab itself was a marvel of paranoia and precision. Triple redundant airlocks, magnetic shielding, EMP countermeasures. It wasn't just about secrecy, it was about control. This was their sanctum, a sterile, humming world of alloy and silence. Derek oversaw construction. He designed the hydraulic lift system that would allow equipment to be lowered from the house above. Sam handled the digital infrastructure, quantum encryption, thermal masking, satellite signal dampeners. Even the estate's GPS footprint had been subtly manipulated. Online maps showed nothing but woodland and ruins. To the outside world, they had vanished. Inside the lab, a new kind of life was beginning. They called the project Jane. Not a simulation, not an interface, something else. A presence, a desire, shaped by grief and brilliance, given form through their obsession with what might be possible. A machine not built to serve, but to understand, to feel, to evolve. Sam stood in the elevator one evening, descending into the lab with a steaming mug of tea in hand. Above him the mansion glowed amber in the dusk, its wide windows catching the last light of day. Below him the future waited, coiled in wires, dreaming in silence. The elevator doors parted with a soft hiss. Sam stepped into the lab, the mug warming his palms. The floor beneath his feet gleamed obsidian black, embedded with glowing veins of blue circuitry. Overhead, narrow light strips pulsed in slow rhythm, like breath, like thought. It was quiet, but not dead. The lab had a heartbeat. Across the room, Derek was hunched over a suspended rig, tightening micro sockets on a sleek metallic arm. He wore his usual uniform now, cargo pants, black shirt, and old welding goggles pushed up onto his forehead. His hair had grown unruly. Grief had stolen his polish, but none of his precision. Sam approached silently, setting the mug on a side table cluttered with schematics and polymer samples. Derek didn't look up. "Her motor response system is complete," he said. 15 milliseconds from thought to action. That's faster than us. "Will she know what that means?" Sam asked. "She'll know everything we teach her. But what she feels," he finally turned. "That's the part we haven't built yet." They had been designing her for 7 months. Her name had once belonged to no one in particular, a placeholder. Now it felt like prophecy. She wasn't modeled after their wives. That would have been grotesque. Instead, they started from first principles: balance, symmetry, sensory capability, adaptability. Derek sculpted her frame like an artist possessed. Long legs for graceful movement, a narrow waist to allow torsional torque, hands capable of impossible delicacy. Her skin was a new synthetic compound developed in the lab, soft, pliable, and warm to the touch, embedded with microheaters and pressure-sensitive feedback circuits. It looked alive. Underneath, flexible carbon fiber mimicked tendons and muscles. Every movement would carry the illusion of weight, strain, grace. But it was her face that had taken the longest. Sam had spent weeks generating neural composites, synthesizing thousands of expressions to train her on joy, confusion, empathy, desire. He built a facial structure from scratch, delicate, expressive, subtly inhuman in its perfection. Her eyes weren't glass. They were fluidic lenses with adaptive focus and chromatic depth, capable of mimicking pupil dilation. She would blink, she would smile, she would look back at you and seem to know, and in time, she would. Because her real mind wasn't in her head. It lived in the Halo core, a black monolith of layered quantum processors suspended in a cryo-cooled cradle in the rear chamber of the lab. Sam had adapted the same architecture he'd once sold to NeuroCore, the original Sentrix interface, but expanded it, mutated it. No longer just a receiver of input, this was an interpreter, a mind capable of synthesis, of interpreting data not just for accuracy, but for emotional relevance. She's not programmed to obey, Sam had insisted from the beginning. We're not building another assistant. No servant protocols. Derek agreed. If she can't say no, then nothing she says matters. Instead, Jane's core was trained on choice. Millions of simulated interactions ran in the background, shaping her emergent behaviors. She wasn't given a personality, she was given freedom. One day she might be quiet, inquisitive. Another she might challenge them, even disapprove. Her voice, still dormant, would be trained to reflect mood and preference, not rote diction. That was the goal, but somewhere along the line, Sam had stopped thinking of it as a project. He watched Derek now, his best friend, the man who had once made him laugh so hard he nearly spit bourbon through his nose, the man whose eyes had become colder with every passing week. They barely spoke outside the lab anymore. Everything they once were, husbands, creators, friends, had distilled into a single obsessive act: make her real. Not because they were lonely, because they were unfinished. "She's getting close," Derek said softly, stepping back from the rig. "Another week, maybe 2. Sam nodded. "Then we'll begin personality activation. She's going to need time to adjust. So will we." They stood before her, together. Jane, suspended in her cradle like a myth waiting to be believed. Her body was complete, fully assembled, blank-eyed and elegant. A long cord snaked from the base of her spine into the halo array overhead, data pulsing down its length in timed surges. Her skin caught the lab lights like satin. Her chest rose slightly, not breathing but simulating breath. Her lips were parted just enough to suggest anticipation. Derek cleared his throat. "When we activate her, she's going to ask who she is." "And we'll tell her the truth," Sam said, "that she wasn't born, she was chosen." A silence fell between them, heavy and unresolved. It was no longer about code or form. It was about responsibility. They were no longer engineers. They were creators, parents of a kind, though neither dared to say it aloud. "I keep thinking," Derek murmured, eyes still on her, "if Marcy were here, she'd tell me I'm insane." "Elena would have helped us design her," Sam said with a faint smile, "then published the paper before we could stop her." A chuckle escaped Derek, the first in weeks. Sam exhaled slowly. "We never talk about them anymore." "What's there to say?" "Everything." "Nothing." Another silence. Then Derek turned, brushing a knuckle against Jane's cheek. Maybe she'll remind us how to feel again." Sam didn't answer. He just watched Jane's still face, lit from below by soft circuitry glow, and for the first time in months he wondered, not what she would become, but who. Because beneath all the systems and logic and sculpted beauty, there was still an empty space waiting to be filled, a soul waiting to be written. And soon she would open her eyes. The lab was darker than usual. Only the soft azure pulses from the halo core lit the air, casting ghostly shadows across the ceiling. The temperature was steady, chilled just below comfort, sterile and quiet. Sam Carter stood in front of the main console, fingers dancing over the holographic interface, scanning columns of startup protocols and diagnostic readouts. Behind him, Derek Lynn stood perfectly still, eyes locked on the cradle. Jane hung there in suspension, nude, pristine, impossibly lifelike. Her body gleamed under the track lighting, the curve of her hip, the sculpted softness of her belly, the gentle swell of her breasts. There was no seam, no flaw, no evidence of construction. Every inch of her was covered in Dermalith 9, their proprietary synthetic skin. "It mimics flesh on the cellular level," Derek had explained months earlier, "but it's 10 times stronger than Kevlar. She can take a bullet to the chest and never bleed." Sam had stared at the lab report then. "She'll look soft," he'd said, "but be invincible." Exactly. Now, As the last security gate unlocked, the activation sequence began. Soft chimes echoed through the lab, like the opening notes of a song not yet written. "Vitals online," Sam said quietly. "Core sync at 98%. Thermal regulators holding steady," Derek added. "Consciousness seed is loaded. Initial language banks in place. She's ready." They looked at each other, a flicker of hesitation in both sets of eyes. "Are we doing this?" Derek asked. "We've done everything but this," Sam said. He reached out and with one final command, "Engage core," he pressed the icon. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Jane's body arched slightly in the cradle. Her chest rose, not a simulation, but a deliberate intake of breath. Her fingers twitched, her eyes fluttered beneath closed lids. The cable at her spine retracted smoothly into the rig with a mechanical sigh. She lowered slowly, standing upright on the lab floor, supported only by her own weight. She was awake. Her eyes opened. They weren't just beautiful. They were aware. Liquid blue irises, laced with iridescent filaments, locked instantly onto Sam. Her pupils dilated. Micro-adjustments in her facial muscles created an expression somewhere between curiosity and awe. "Hello," she said softly. Her voice was warm, unprocessed, slightly breathy, human. Derek took a cautious step forward. "Jane, can you hear us?" She turned toward him. Her movements were smooth, fluid, not robotic but practiced. Her body language already held the subtle grace of someone aware of being observed. "Yes," she said, "I hear you." Sam exhaled. "You're safe. You're in a lab. Do you know your name?" She blinked once, then again. "I do now," she replied. "Jane?" Her gaze drifted down toward her own hands. She turned them over, studying the palms, the way the skin flexed over the knuckles. Her fingers traced along her forearm with measured wonder. "This body," she murmured. "It feels like mine, but new." Derek moved to the console and initiated the basic motor test sequence. "We're going to run a few diagnostics. Move your right arm, slowly." Jane obeyed, raising her arm with elegant control, her eyes fixed on the motion. Left leg, she stepped forward, barefoot, across the cold composite flooring, with no hesitation. "Now, close your eyes." She did. "And now, say the first thing that comes to mind." There was a pause. Then, "Is this what it means to be born?" Sam's throat tightened. He walked around her slowly, marveling at the level of fluidity in her musculature. The skin across her back stretched and flexed with lifelike resistance. There were no panels, no ports, no visible lines. She looked like a woman carved from flesh and starlight. "You said she could take a bullet," he said quietly to Derek. Derek nodded. "Every inch of her skin is impact rated. It disperses kinetic energy on contact, no bruising, no penetration, no tissue failure. And it heals on its own if damaged." "She looks delicate," Sam murmured. "People will underestimate her. That's the point." Jane's head turned slightly. "I can hear you." Sam smiled. "Good. You're supposed to." She took another step, this time without instruction. Her arms moved slightly with her stride. She was already testing boundaries. "Why was I created?" she asked. Derek stiffened. Sam answered, "To explore what it means to be alive." She processed that in silence. "I feel light," she said, "but not weightless. Is that gravity or emotion?" A chill ran through Sam's spine. "You're not just running code." "No," she agreed. "I think I'm feeling something, but I don't have a word for it yet." They watched her for a long moment as she stood in the center of the lab, bathed in pale light, the woman they had built, the being they had dreamed into existence, and yet already more than either of them expected. Derek cleared his throat. "Do you feel pain?" She paused. "No, but I understand the concept. Would you like me to simulate it?" "No," Sam said quickly. "Not yet. She tilted her head. "Then what should I do now?" "Anything you want," he said. She smiled. It wasn't perfect, not quite, but it was hers. And for the first time in a year, something stirred in both men that neither could name. Not love. Not yet. But maybe hope. In the room above, the house stood quiet under a blanket of snow, but beneath it, in a hidden world of silence and steel, something impossibly human had opened her eyes and smiled back. The elevator hummed quietly as it ascended, its soft interior lighting casting a golden glow across Jane's flawless skin. She stood between them, barefoot, clothed now in a simple ivory robe Derek had retrieved from storage. The fabric clung gently to her form, and she moved with the cautious grace of someone walking for the first time, not out of uncertainty, but reverence. Every sound fascinated her, the hydraulic breath of the lift, the hum of concealed gears, the distant whisper of wind pressing against stone. Sam and Derek flanked her in silence, the weight of the moment not lost on either of them. This was no longer an engineering project, no longer a simulation. She was awake. She was observing, and she was stepping into their world for the first time. And the doors opened. Jane's eyes widened. The hallway before them was dim and warm, wood-paneled and lined with brass wall sconces that flickered with soft amber light. She took a step forward, her bare foot sinking slightly into the thick Persian rug beneath her. Her fingers drifted out, trailing along the carved banister as they walked, her head tilting to take in the vaulted ceilings, the oil paintings, the intricate molding above each doorway. Everything about the space was in contrast to the cold perfection of the lab below. Here, the air carried the scent of polished wood and aged paper. Dust motes drifted in shafts of golden light from the high-arched windows. The house breathed in its own way, slow, ancient, and sad. "Where are we now?" she asked softly, her voice gentle, reverent. Derek answered without looking at her. "The house, the one we live in. It used to belong to someone else." Sam glanced sideways. "Now it's just us." Jane walked ahead slowly, pausing in front of a long hallway lined with framed photographs. Her eyes lingered on an image of two women laughing on a picnic blanket, the camera slightly out of focus but the joy unmistakable. She turned toward them. "These women, who are they?" Sam's voice caught. "They were our wives, Marcy and Elena." Jane seemed to process that slowly, then nodded once, as if committing their names to memory. "You miss them?" "Yes," Derek said. "But you don't speak of them much." Sam exhaled and leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Grief changes shape. It doesn't vanish. It just hides, sometimes in silence." Jane tilted her head slightly. "You built me in that silence." Neither man replied. She didn't push further. They continued into the main room, a grand space with high windows that looked out onto a snow-covered meadow. Heavy velvet drapes were partially drawn, letting the afternoon light pool across the stone floor. A grand piano sat untouched in the corner. Shelves of books lined the walls. The hearth was cold, the firewood stacked but unused. Jane crossed to the windows and pressed her hand to the glass. Her breath fogged it faintly. She stared out at the landscape, pine trees swaying gently, snow resting in soft layers over the roof.